speakers, our first lecturers, with the topic Climate Change and Mountain Ecosystems and Communities, to Professor Sava and Professor Antofie from Romanian Food Industry and Environmental Protection Institute. I would like to pass you the floor, and we are looking forward for your lecture on this very important topic, combining climate change and communities. Do we have our speakers, Professor Sava and Professor Antofie?
Yes, thank you.
I would like to ask you, the floor is yours. You're very welcome to start.
Yes, thank you. Mihaela, my colleagues Mihaela will present our paper. Mihaela, are you here? Mihaela?
I see your name on the screen.
Just please wait, please wait. We are co-hosting her. We are searching.
Mm-hmm. Dear participants, you can.
She is there now.
We see her here, but probably something wrong with the sound.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, co-chair, and thank you very much, chair. Hello to everybody. It is a real honor for us to be here with you today. We already had a colleague earlier talking from our university. I will try to share my screen by now. Share the screen. And hope will be seen. Yes. Okay, I will go further. Our presentation is related to red listing crops varieties as a tool to respond climate change and food security challenges. It is a topic we are working for it for more than 10 years. I can say that the first time I hear about red listing crops was in 2008 during the COPs of the Convention on Biological Diversity. It was in Bonn at the time being, and I've been responsible with the negotiation for Romania under the EU for that period. And inside the national strategy of Germany related to biodiversity conservation, it was a topic related to red listing the crops in Germany. It was really intriguing for me because it was also related to questions coming from my experience working with agriculture, where I realized that from the national official catalogs for varieties and for hybrids, all the time old varieties were removing very, very fast, especially after 1989. And I realized that, yes, we have a kind of genetic erosion in this point, but how can I define it? And how can I develop a methodology in order to be substantiated and in order to be supported by my, let's say, colleagues from the policy level all over the country. So I start with questions. Do we need a red listing crops where we are talking about mountain ecosystems, but also we are talking about communities? There are a lot of other instruments in agriculture, such UPOV, which is the Convention for Recognizing the Trade of Varieties, and also recognizing the intellectual property rights under this concept. red listing is not for the wild species. Why they should be also for the crops? They are already for the wild. So crops are not protected. This is not a political issue. Or is it science in here? Yes, it is. Why now we connect crops varieties to climate change? Or why talking about, not now, during these days, about this pandemic, COVID-19, which actually show us how important it is to refer to the resilience of our countries. So it was the time to go back to philosophical concepts, and it was a time when Aristotle talked a lot on generation and corruption. And I mentioned Aristotle because he was the mentor of Alexander the Great, and he was the greatest conqueror all over the world, making the largest emperor ever known. So I think we all together can be a kind of mirroring the emperor that was established by Alexander the Great. And why not? So I started at that time looking for Brundtland report to understand what really means sustainable development. And I realized that crops and all genetic resources can be put in social, economic, and environmental issue all together, maybe in different kind of percentage for each of them. But anyway, they are intersecting in somewhere. I was looking for the multilateral environmental agreements because I've been for 3 years the national focal point for the CBD. I knew almost, let's say, 7,000 pages of the decisions coming from the CBD at time being. And I realized the continuum of concerning related to the erosion of biodiversity and also connected to food security, also connected to nature conservation. And why not? In Article 8G, as I mentioned yesterday, it is related to traditional knowledge. When we are talking about communities, we are talking about traditional knowledge if we are in the rural areas. And this traditional knowledge even is belonging to the immaterial heritage. It is really important because of this traditional knowledge, we are able to have communities that can be smart, can develop by themselves, then they can be accessed. So otherwise it's not possible to transfer technology. Otherwise it's not possible to talk about sustainable development. So red listing can be an instrument to adapt to climate change because we have crops or we have land races, we have old races that can be developed for 100 years. And they encompasses all elements coming from the environment. And they can easily adapt to every single, let's say, variation of the environmental factors. So navigating among all these treaties, UPOV, Convention on Biological Diversity, International Treaty on Plants, and of course other treaties, I realized at the moment, this was in the 2011, that we have 158 wheat varieties that have been recorded for UPOV, which means that these are under intellectual property rights for Romania, and they have been developed by our breeders. And now, when I'm talking about 2011, most of them were not recorded anymore. So where is such a tremendous work going out? Can we stop this process of losing almost everything was realized by the Romanian research in this part? Either is Romanian research public or either is one that is private. So a lot of other part of analysis have been applied in our research, SWOT or PESTLE, that were applied for capacity building needs. And also, if we are talking about the financial or entrepreneurial part, we talk about spin-off, or if we are talking about developing policies, the DRISP, which is the most used, at least in environmental part in the European Union countries. So first ideas for this, and I'm very happy to communicate by now with Professor Joshi from Nepal, was coming from Nepal, and I was really impressed about the high-level scientific work done there. I tried to understand their process. I try to understand the results they presented in their activities. Also, I try to understand the German strategy related to red listing the crops. And going further, I discovered Professor Karl Hammer from the Kassel University, and he was also very interesting about the disappearance of these crops species. But more than that, in Iran, with Kroos Koshbach, he was able to publish a book where they make an inventory for more than 6,000 years, and they revealed a couple of, let's say, thousands of species that have been disappeared during the human civilization up to date. So today we are talking about at least 30 species at the commercial level for existing, let's say, in our human civilization. But I was looking also in the principles laying down the IUCN red list for wild species, and try to understand the red listing for our country, and trying to understand the connectivity in between what means, let's say, wild relatives to our crops in our country. So I reflected everything in a book that I shared with colleagues from Biodiversity International from Rome. I was very happy to receive from them positive thoughts and a real positive support coming from their part. And together with Spadulosi Stefano and others, Rojas from Bolivia, or Subedi from India, or Vögel from Germany, we are considering that it is really important to put this methodology during one conference of the IUCN red list for cultivated species. And the 4-cell methodology of Yoshi is in the central part of this publication. And also the main conclusion is that we don't have a monitoring system. This is a major problem we have in agriculture, the lack of this monitoring system. Let's see, next steps. Germany developed a very interesting portal related to this red listing the crops. They were very, very fast. We are talking about how to define the scene from the down to the local level or bottom-up approach. And here I have some of the institutions from our country, and also the same circle to try to link all together what is food system composed of. So I will try together with my colleague to consider scientific approaches for social cultural vulnerabilities assessment, or biodiversity loss, or anthropic pressure, climate change, energy, resilience of agroecosystems, fair and access to genetic resources, which is a bit new because of Nagoya Protocol, and also financial vulnerabilities that are very, very interesting, especially under the climate change and now connected with this pandemic COVID-19. I tried together with my colleague to define scientific surveying areas. So each country has got some peculiarities, and we have to define very, very closely this surveying area. We have to look to the agroecosystems, or we have to look to the landscape, let's say, level. And our approach looked to the landscape approach. Do we have to tackle also cultural heritage? Yes, from scientific point of view, we need to tackle this. Whom to address? We have to address mayors, all authorities, farmers, householders. We address all of those guys. Non-governmental organizations a bit, communicators maybe, and all stakeholders not so much, because it is a very, very interesting process with really many barriers, and we really need to build up more for the communication between these rings, building up a kind of strategy. So another interesting image for you is the Transylvania here, surrounded by the mountains. Here you may see these units from Sibiu area, and in the bottom part is the Carpathian Mountains. And most of these villages have been surveyed by our team during, let's say, 10, 12 years. And we try also to define for our region the traditional knowledge as a split in between the knowledge connected to the wild plants or wild animals that can come inside the food chain, crops and domesticated animals, rural activities, because activities means other type of knowledge, and of course organizational and functional of the rural units. So all together for us have been investigated in a couple of villages. This is an image of such a village, which is to the bottom of the mountains. It's Ațel. Here is the way such a village can be organized from a map. And we are talking about functionality in their landscape, rural functional landscape, according to Gottfried. We may talk about fresh air, potable water, and fertile soil. Also, you can see here we have cows, we have horses connected with local traditions and connected, of course, to the management of all natural resources inside these territorial units. And also we have traditional practices working with land races and old races because of religious beliefs, the connecting with their ancestors, and why not talking about the pride of the people. This is a very interesting emotional subject that can be tackled during the survey of these amazing gene banks that we were able to find in these places. Anyway, Carpathian region is recognized as a mosaic of crop fields. This is due to the relief, and because of this, they can prove that can be interesting, let's say, barriers for developing nice new features inside the rural villages or rural communities for their further development or their further use. We have a festival of cabbage, which is a very old cabbage or landrace. We have seeds, and we try to analyze them through genetic markers. Also, we have maize and different kind of land races. We are talking about the GMO maize, but we are forgetting that for more than 200 years, in Romania at least, we have different kind of varieties that have been isolated in the mountain areas, and these people are really connected with these resources because of the taste, because of the communication and connecting with families and connecting with their ancestors. And they are talking to us that the taste is really, really good, and it's not like those coming from the commercial genetic resources of a kind. We also have been investigating the traditional orchards to the bottom of the mountains and presenting our results in a conference in France. we have investigated more than 32 old varieties of apple, but also we investigated more than 10 for pear, and also for wild cherry and walnuts. And I may say that investigating the literature up to archaeological discoveries in the region, we can say that the cultivation of the apple is longer than 6,000 years in this area, and for a long time it was considered that apple was brought in Romania by the Roman Empire, and we realized that it's not true. It was existing here due to these evidences coming from archaeological discoveries for more than 6,000 years. So National Gene Bank it is the national focal point for plant treaty, but is not able to deal with such a huge variety of genetic resources according to Article 5 of plant treaty. What to do? What to do is going to on-farm conservation, and also to see for the, at least for wheat varieties, what the, let's say, species, wild, let's say, relatives of these species are in Romania, and what is the status of conservation of them, and to be already considered for the accession during the breeding program for the wheat in Romania. We have here a situation of official trade of varieties in Romania between 1988 and 2016. It is an increase for incoming crops varieties coming from abroad. Historical varieties in our country, most of them are having a base coming from Besostea from Russia, and they were developed for our country up to 89, and during today even these are used for the breeding program in our country. And this list was validated luckily for us in 2018 in the scientific community of in Fundulea during a congress. And also we have other historical varieties in this regard, and varieties before 89 and the year of removing, these are proving coming from official recording. And this is the single one case as a case study I brought to you. It's Albota, which was cultivated mainly in the Southern Carpathian, and all the history only connected with one single variety. And we are talking about here about more than 180 varieties of wheat that we have investigated in our country. So other images really nice from our countryside, varieties in the national catalog also for wheat. The crisis coming in the EU, it is another political issue, and you have to take care about this, because policy can work negatively in supporting your conservation and sustainable use of crops genetic resources. Romania entered into the EU with the same treaty like Bulgaria, and more than 170 varieties from Romania and Bulgaria have been removed at the beginning, in the beginning of 2007 for entering into the EU. But I have to tell you that Europe is not banning such entering of genetic resources. It was a misunderstanding from both sides, from Romania and from Bulgaria situation. So the European regulatory framework allows you to support these genetic resources as genetic resources under conservation. So it is possible to support them, but it was a mistake that we realized that was done during the negotiation of our dossier for entering into the EU. This is another another species, another variety, which is in the central Transylvania used. And it was reintroduced, I have to tell you, in 2014. And we consider that our methodology published in 2011 and transferred to the Ministry of Agriculture created a lobby for supporting the revision of the list of the species and varieties in Romania under the conservation. So the list of vulnerable varieties under political agenda in 2007, and in green, and in red and blue. Varieties under conservation since 2011 start to grow. Here are a couple of definitions that we were working on. What means extinct? Extinct is connected with on farm and also in breeding program. Endangered on farm, we are connecting every single genetic resources with on farm conservation, because I consider that it is the much cheaper possible way of preserving of these varieties. Red listing as extinct. We have also some extinct category in our country. And Fundulea 900, it is one of them. I was really happy to find out that this variety in Romania, it is preserved in China, and it is used in the breeding program. And due to the fact that this line breed that was realized in Romania encompasses 2 genes on the same single chromosome, working against the rust, wheat rust, as a disease for this species. I find out, looking also in the history of the place, that during 200 years, 300 years, we have already historical wheat rust places in Transylvania, and these mountains are working for it. And it is really important because such genetic resources can be the best used for the breeding programs in wheat, at least. We have 77 varieties extinct on farm, and they have been scientifically validated in 2018. And we can consider that 184 varieties are critically endangered on farm, especially because of the lack of knowledge in this regard. We have to make visible our Germ Plus collection because we are working in a global world. We have to try to communicate further for our Germ Plus collection development, connectivity. We have to bring together scientists, breeders, developers, economists. We need to approach all genetic pools in Romania, and we need to connect them all with the multilateral system of the plant treaty, and to develop innovative financial mechanisms to support the conservation of PGR. And under this regard, I have to mention those directives coming from the European Union, which is really very open for preserving them, for accepting them, and for including them even into a circular economy up to the national economy. It will be an honor to work together with you. So working together in this region, we realized that we can work to the pride of the people. We have been engaged in a project developing the integrated management of the traditional gardening in Sibiu area. And we have already in 19, the year of pandemic, the first decision of a council decision related to the recognition of genetic resources with heritage value for Moșna commune. As I mentioned it to you before, I coupled these genetic resources to TK or its traditional knowledge, and also I coupled it with the UNESCO convention related to intangible heritage. And this is the income of this decision related to the red list of the crops cultivated, that is commune for trade. We have not to be only connected with what is land races, but all what is commercial on our territory, and also the list of the species cultivated for more than 50 years based on the people, let's say, words, and also cultivated for more than 100 years. Such seeds and such genetic resources can follow after that genetic approach for molecular analysis in order to see if we have distinctive molecular markers for being recognized at the international level and so on. So red listing crops should be a strategic instrument for the conservation and use of PECFRA in harmony with policy, regulatory framework, and regional peculiarities. Acknowledgement among global population of the value of arable land, of knowledge connected to it or its use as sustainable agricultural practices, the value of predicting the best option for agriculture or integrating these values into the national strategy. So I do thank you for your kind attention, for following our methodology for red listing crops in Romania in accordance to the global framework. I do hope that our presentation come up with some interesting issues for you. The last image was the image of our rectorate, and you are very welcome in our country and our countryside to see the heritage we have here, and we are so happy to be blessed with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this first and very informative presentation. Dear speakers and dear participants, we have very precise and very tough schedule. Could we ask you to try to stick to the timeline so everybody who is in the list of speakers could take his or her time with his or her presentation? Thank you very much for understanding. Should you have any questions, you can post them in the chat in written format or address it directly to the speakers.